Green Bay Packers 48, Dallas Cowboys 32. The score is not doing justice, and it was a quiet 32 for Dallas.
And they almost, like, if they'd scored at the end, it would have been like a one-score game.
It was getting a little testy there.
I mean, they were. I think Greg Olson was saying, can you imagine somebody tuning in now and be like, oh, look, it's been a high-scoring, pretty close affair? Like, nope. This was a beatdown that eventually Dallas just clawed a few scores back late and made it, like, look respectable on the scoreboard. They got annihilated by the Packers.
Prescott had the old-school Kirk game. Get the interceptions out early when it matters, and then,
just rack up the garbage time stats.
Tack on, end up with – I mean, look, Dak Prescott had 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's all you need to know, right?
Yeah.
That's what he had.
That's pretty much it.
Got the passer rating back up to 89.8. Man, the Packers dominated this game. They got up 48-16. It was 27-0 just before the half. Dallas did score with 2 seconds left in the first half. They needed that one just to survive.
That gave them a glimmer of hope because they were getting the ball at the start of the second half. And you're like, okay, we're not dead right now. We just saw a 27-7 or whatever comeback last year. It's doable. And then it wasn't doable.
The opening drive, Packers
took the ball.
They took the ball. Now, I'm going to give you credit here. Now, you mentioned this strategy for the Niners. And the Packers have a chance to implement this week against the Niners. But you mentioned if the Niners are front runners and they can't, make a comeback win here. If they can't come from behind, maybe we get up on them. And, the Cowboys aren't exactly that, but they're definitely good front runners.
It's for a different reason, but I like the strategy the same. For the 49ers, I think you want to do it because if you can get up the way the Packers got up in this game, I don't know that the 49ers offense it's got to be capable of it, but it's not good in those situations, right? And it's certainly not as good as it is when they're in neutral game script situations or ahead. So I think that's one of your only ways of trying to attack them is to put them in a spot that they're not used to being. What we just talked about with Miami, it's the same idea, right? The playoffs do different things to teams. You can throw them out of whack by just putting them in a situation they're not used to being in. For Dallas, I think the reason you want to do it is 20 years of history, 30 years of history. When was the last time they won a playoff? They're like the Lions at this point. The Cowboys are playing with this crippling, suffocating weight of pressure of history now that they keep screwing it up in the playoffs. I read you before we came on air. Since 2021, the Cowboys have the second best record in the NFL behind only the Chiefs. The Chiefs are 9-1 in the playoffs or something in that time. Dallas is 1-3. 1-4, something like that. This is the thing. They are dealing with this idea of knowing that we can go 12 wins every year and we get to the playoffs and we choke. And it happens all the time. So, and you're like, okay, it's only the Packers. What the hell? But if the Packers roll in here, take the ball, put a touchdown on the board right away, immediately Dallas is like, uh-oh. And then if they get a stop, now it's like, oh, it's happening again. And then if they score again, now you're 2 touchdowns down. You're like, forget it. Game's gone. It's happened again. We're all getting run out of here, tarred and feathered. I think that makes a real difference. They immediately put the seed of doubt into Dallas's heads, and then we're able to keep building on it and get ahead. And then, Dallas never came close, really, to getting it back.
Packers started with a big boy drive. Aaron Jones capped it with a touchdown. Aaron Jones had 3 touchdowns, 118
running the
yards.
ball as well.
But also, Love is a third down killer, man. He is already at that point where if you are a fan of the opposing team, because look, Dallas made a few big run stops early on. DeMarcus Lawrence was in the backfield making plays early on, a couple plays, right? 3rd and long, and you've got Jordan Love, and he's got this ability already to drop back, sit kind of deep in the pocket, by the way. And I know every time Jordan Love does something good, he gets a Brett Favre or an Aaron Rodgers or a Patrick Mahomes comp. But there's some Mahomes similarities with you're going to drop back deeper in the pocket than usual because your arm's good enough or you have the arm talent to get the ball to where you need to. And so Love is just making these key plays on 3rd and long and 3rd and long. And eventually the 3rd touchdown, they go all-out blitz, and he just throws this fadeaway, head-high, perfect touchdown to go up.
That pass is ridiculous.
It's unbelievable. And this is why I said, look, the stat line's almost identical to Stroud. Love I don't believe he had a turnover-worthy play in there. I don't have it in front of me. But I don't think Love earned a few more of his yards, I would say, than Stroud. Yeah. Granted, there was a Luke Musgrave touchdown where it looked there was a coffin corner punt to him for a 38-yard touchdown. So just understand that. But what I'm saying is, on that first drive, Love's converting third and longs. He kept doing that throughout the game. He's become a just third down defense, just heartbreaker, man. He is going to crush your third down defense and make this incredible throw and this incredible play. And then Green Bay started to get the run game going too, and Dallas had no answers for anything the Packers did offensively.
Yeah, and that's why, even if their offense had gotten it together, I don't think they were winning this game anyway. I think the Packers' offense was just incredible. What a story this offense is this year. The youngest offense in the NFL. Jordan Love, a first-year starter who the Packers didn't have faith in him. Forget anybody else. Like, everyone's busy taking victory laps. Packers fans knew. Nobody knew. The Packers didn't know. They signed him to this, hedge of a contract where it's like, hey, really, they declined his fifth-year option, instead gave him this makeshift contract that's nowhere in the middle of anything so they can get out of it. Nobody had confidence that Jordan Love was going to be this. And he rolls out there, and right now he is playing as well as any quarterback in the NFL, and has been for a while. I think since week 9, he was the second greatest quarterback in the NFL, second graded by PFF, behind only Purdy. This game might have made him number 1. I haven't checked since, but
he's got 3 straight 90-plus passing grades and 4 in his last 8 games.
Yeah, he's gone from, we talked about, he's streaky and he hits these grooves where everything's good. Well, he's been in a groove now for a month.
It's in the groove.
Right. He is genuinely playing like the best quarterback in the NFL and has been for an extended period of time. Jordan Love, he's become, again, this is like, we talked about Stroud has become Georgia CJ Stroud the whole time, right? And we were like, he's hitting the 99th or 100th percentile of his range of outcomes this year and might be that guy in perpetuity going forward. Jordan Love comes into the NFL as a wildly inconsistent, volatile, raw quarterback drafted in the first round where you're like, that guy is a second, third round prospect that got pushed up. Again, he's hitting the 100th percentile of his range of outcomes right now and has somehow squeezed the entire development arc into a season. But he's playing insane right now. And so earlier I was like, okay, Stroud was good, but I think PFF Bobby deserves the bulk of the credit. This was a case where I think it was a partnership. I think both sides did an incredible job. Jordan Love was insane in this game. A bunch of incredible plays, just looked in the zone, was hitting everything. The young receivers have developed really well. They're a huge part of this as well. But what the offense did, and we gave Dan Quinn a lot of credit earlier in the season for adjusting in a way that some disciples of that kind of coaching tree have not in the past. I think Dan Quinn deserves some blame now for not adjusting. The Packers came out in this game running 12 personnel a lot. So that's 1 back, 2 tight ends, less wide receivers. And they ran the ball. And remember, Dallas is theoretically, the problem with that defense is it's a little bit of a soft underbelly. When teams have caused some problems this year, it's been running down their throat. Packers did that in the opening drive, punched it in with Aaron Jones. One of the reasons that happened is because Dallas tends to counter 12 personnel with nickel, right, with an extra DB. It's just the way they do it this season.
And they're already soft at linebacker anyway.
Right. They've got injuries at linebacker, so it's a degree to which their hands are tied, and they've just gone, we're playing 12 with nickel. Most of these tight ends are receivers anyway. We're better off having DBs out there. But the Packers were like, well, if you're going to do that, we're going to take the run game advantage, and we're going to run the ball. And so drive number 1, if you were Dallas or if you're Dan Quinn, you would think a red flag goes up. You're like, this might be an issue. We might want to solve this. Well, in the second half, the Packers still ran out of 12 personnel the entire time, and Dallas countered that with 78% nickel. You're like, no adjustment. They never adjusted to it. And the Packers just had success all the way through the game because Dallas never found a counter.
So I want to give the Packers all their credit, and then of course we'll preview their game against the Niners, where they've got a chance to pull the upset.
Yeah, but that was a LaFleur win. Like, in addition to Jordan Love, that's LaFleur as well.
There's a lot of game flow in this one, because I want to give the Packers all their credit, and then of course the Dallas discussion and the narrative stuff is fascinating. But Love, unbelievable. The run game, schematically, I think the fact that Matt LaFleur now, when you start to look at his track record, he goes into Green Bay in 2019. They go 13-3. At the time, they weren't great, but they were 13-3. I think number 2 seed in 2019. They go to the NFC Championship, lose to the 49ers. The next 2 years, Aaron Rodgers has 2 of his better statistical seasons, wins the MVP in 20 and 21. Remember, Rodgers was at a downswing in his career, 3 or 4 straight years, maybe 2 or 3 straight years of production being down. LaFleur goes in, rejuvenates Aaron Rodgers, gets 2 MVPs out of him, goes to some NFC Championship games. Now, and then they draft Jordan Love, and all the while they're developing him into this, which is just unreal. This second half of the season, as we've highlighted. So LaFleur deserves a ton of credit, man, for all of this. And then the whole Packers organization. It's like, how many rookies and second-year receivers and pass catchers and offensive tackles, like how many of these players are they just going to hit on and turn this into, like, we're going to go into no matter what happens to the Packers, they could lose by 30 this week against the Niners. The hype for the Packers next year is going to be through the roof.
Yeah.
And the Lions could go on, and we're going to say, what? The Packers and the Lions are in the same division next year? This is going to be nuts in the NFC North. And by the way, the Bears are getting better, and the Vikings are still tough. But the hype's going to be through the roof because of, no matter what happens, because of how Jordan Love has played and what they've built in Green Bay and how quickly they've turned this thing around.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a much better team now. I think they're a better team now than they were last year with Rodgers. And we said this after the Thanksgiving game. I didn't know how often they would do this, but if the Packers play their best game, they really can compete and play with anybody. And this showed it. They wrecked the Dallas Cowboys.
I mean, right now, Jordan Love is playing better than Aaron Rodgers. Like, I'm not saying he's going to be better, but
absolutely.
For the second half of the season now, Jordan Love has been playing at a level that's higher than Rodgers was a year ago in the same sort of situation or in a similar situation. Like, this is the thing. The Jordan Love development, it's not like this. I don't think that they turned him into like an all-pro caliber quarterback from the bench for 3 years, and now we're seeing the fruits of it. He wasn't good in the first half of this season. Now, some of the stats were really nice, but he didn't have a PFF grade higher than 65 in the first 8 weeks. From that point on, 65 was almost the lowest grade he's had. He's had, his baseline is insane. So he's just flipped a switch, like midway through the year. The receivers playing better has absolutely helped, like that whole thing. And LaFleur's offense has changed. I think they've realized that actually the guy's better than we thought he was, and they've opened everything up, and they've let him attack deeper down the field. So all of the dynamics are shifting, but he has absolutely like found something or developed in the course of a season, and he's playing out of his mind right now. All of those young receivers look good, whether it's like each individual one of them, including guys that they just found on people's practice squads like Bo Melton. All of these guys have been making plays. The offensive line is good and has been solidified. Green Bay's offense right now is like one of the better offenses in the NFL, and nobody wants to face them.
Off-season discussion stuff, I want to touch on it quickly, but I would love to sit and maybe do this on Wednesday. But is there more? Should teams do this more, where they just draft a first-round quarterback and just sit him, right? When we were having our Fields debates a lot, should we sit Fields? Should we play him? And everybody, like the fans want to see the first-rounder. But with the Fields thing, it was like, well, because you had Andy Dalton ahead of him, you just want to see Justin Fields and what he can do. Like, we're talking about the Dolphins situation. Should the Dolphins actually draft a first-round quarterback and say, you're backing up Tua? I don't care. You're just going to back him up. And you might be good in 3 or 4 years. I mean, even like New England drafting Jimmy Garoppolo a few years ago. We'll say what you want about Garoppolo, but he turned out to be a pretty good NFL starter, and he just sat on the bench for 3 or 4 years. I think they wanted him to replace Brady at some point, but is there more of a case for teams to do this more often and actually stick to it and actually say, you're just sitting and developing and learning and whatever, and we're going to have a guy in year 3 or year 4 or whatever it is who's cheaper than the best quarterback. It's going to hedge against this guy, our starter, and maybe that's the best thing for your development.
It's so the sit or play argument for quarterbacks is so difficult because you never see the other side. You never see the alternative reality of what happens.
No A/B analysis for the same player.
So
yes.
The Packers are now looking at this and saying, okay, we for 2 times in a row, we're like 15, 20 years apart, we drafted a quarterback, we sat him for multiple years, and he's turned out to be amazing. Right? We went Aaron Rodgers, who's a Hall of Famer, and now apparently Jordan Love, based off half a season of play, is at that same kind of level. So we nailed it. That we've found the strategy. You draft a quarterback. Doesn't matter if it's the first round. You draft the quarterback, and then you sit him for 2-3 years, and then he plays, and he's great. But what if you were just burning 2 or 3 years, and actually either one of those guys would have been amazing if you played him year 1? Maybe it would have taken him apparently 8 weeks to get it, and then 8 weeks on, you found your star quarterback. Like the Packers may have just wasted 2 years, 3 years of Jordan Love's career by not throwing him right out there.
I would also say, you're under attack. We're under attack a little bit because if you have takes from 4 years ago, those come up. There's also a case for the Packers where because they had Aaron Rodgers still playing at a high level, I don't know if they left a Super Bowl on the table. I wanted to, obviously, we'll do this Wednesday, but if they had drafted Brandon Ayuk, is that actually, and it was Brandon Ayuk and Devontae Adams for 2 years in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, where they were the number 1 seed, would that actually have won them a Super Bowl? Did they actually leave a Super Bowl on the table? But they're reaping the benefits now with the way Love's playing.
Yeah, or remember, like the biggest cheat code in the NFL in today's league is amazing quarterback on rookie contract, right? Well, the Packers voluntarily burned 3/4 of that by not playing Jordan Love before that. Like, if he was this good right away, like if the development wasn't necessary from the sideline to get him to where he is, and I don't know.
And we don't know if that's actually the case.
It could be, it might not be. But the point being, if it wasn't, you not only did you potentially leave a Super Bowl on the table, like you've got multiple A/B analysis, right? Either draft Jordan Love for the future or draft Brandon Ayuk for Aaron Rodgers now. Alternatively, either sit Jordan Love for multiple years on the sideline or play him, and if he's amazing on a rookie contract, that's also a potential way of winning a Super Bowl because you don't have any money in the quarterback position. So it's this weird world where you only see half of the analysis. Like right now, it's survivorship bias. Like, right now all the evidence says, well, apparently sitting quarterbacks leads you to all pro success regardless of what happens. Therefore, the next team, all we got to do is draft a guy, sit him for 3 years, and he's amazing. Done. I don't know if
it also has to do with the actual player.
Yeah.
Is it better if it's a toolsy player like Love? Is it better if it's, a guy who's apparently a really good offensive coach in LaFleur? Is it just the environment that you put him into, And
that's why I don't know that the sitting development thing is actually the driving force here, because they went into the season, A, they didn't necessarily believe he was the guy, as evidenced by the contract negotiation and the way that went down. B, the offense was very much pared down for the first half of the year, and they almost, they were surprised by how good he was. It's like, oh, he's actually capable of doing way more than this. Let's open it up. Let's give him the Rodgers playbook, and now we can really start making hay. And so if that was the sort of master plan, right? We sit him for the sideline for 3 years, and then by year 3, when we give him the job, here's where he is. Then I don't think both of those things would have unfolded the way they did. The fact that they did suggests that, this is just, it's as surprising to Green Bay as it is to everybody else that Jordan Love is amazing right now. But it's for the purposes of this discussion, it's irrelevant because the point being, he's amazing right now.
Maybe we had our Wednesday discussion already. All right, let's talk Cowboys. Here's my question. What do you do with a front runner? What do you do with a team that is consistently good against bad teams? And so the narrative remains for Dallas. The Dolphins thought that they got over their hump by beating Dallas.
Yeah.
Christmas Eve, I believe it was. They beat Dallas. Dallas beat Philadelphia at home. That was like their biggest win. They beat the Eagles finally with Jalen Hurts as the starting quarterback. However, we've seen the Eagles collapse everywhere else. And, I thought Dallas was good enough that they were going to win at home anyway. They lost on the road to Philly. So Dallas still can't beat good teams. And then why? Right off the bat, you mentioned, hey, the Packers get up 7-0, and then Dak comes back. They throw interception to Jair Alexander. That was what really flipped it. The Packers are up 14-0, and it's like, okay, this thing's on. And Kevin Burkhardt and Greg Olsen kept highlighting, why was Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb not on the same page?
It was weird.
The whole thing was weird. Like, I love to debunk narrative stuff, right? But every now and again in sports, sometimes the narrative is true. Like the whole Packers having 3 straight draft and develop quarterbacks who have become good. It makes no sense that it should work 30 years apart, but it does. I think a lot of times in the media, you overrate players get nervous in the playoffs and stuff. I think a lot of times media members who maybe never played beyond Little League think back to Little League and they're like, man, I was nervous when I played. I bet the pro players are nervous in the playoffs too. Like, it doesn't usually happen that way. But for some reason, like in yesterday's game with the Cowboys, it felt off right away. It was like you could feel the tension and the pressure in Dallas for a team that was playing pressure-free the whole year. Like the whole year. They had a couple duds in there, but the whole year Dallas was like, whatever, we're going to do our thing. This is our best team. This is the best Dallas Cowboys team. This was their chance. And they came out in the playoffs tense, and they played tense, and Dak was off, and him and CD were at each other's throats like 12 plays into the game. Everything was just off in Dallas. And so maybe the narrative stuff there is actually true.
Yeah, I don't know what that was, but like really early in the game, there was like a 3rd and 8, and it was just out of CeeDee Lamb's reach. But it was, it was the right read. It would have been a first down. It would have picked up, and I think that was their first drive after the Packers had scored. They then have to punt. Now you're already in a hole. It's exactly the dream scenario for the Packers, and like 4 inches is the difference.
Every
between
third
Dallas.
down is just like magnified, though, because you're Dallas and you're losing, and
So that one goes away from them, but it was like a normal play where you just didn't complete it. But very soon after that, it was like they're not on the same page. Like something weird is happening here, and they're both like jawing at each other. Like, what is this? And the problem is, I think they reacted to that, or Dak did, or the play calling did, or both, by saying, we have to fix that combination. So they like kept going at CeeDee Lamb. Like they kept targeting him to the point where I think it actually made everything worse, because now they're like so hyper-focused. They're no longer focused on like winning or getting the offense back in sync. They're focused on like fixing Dak to CeeDee, because the belief is obviously that will lead to the offense being fixed and us winning. But actually, if you just like played the game honest again, right? For some reason, Dak to CeeDee right now is not functioning. Forget that. Just call the play it the way, play what you see. Forget that you need to get CeeDee going. Like, just don't. And I know this is so easy. It's always like it's hindsight, right? Because you hear all the time in game people saying, well, actually, you got to get your top guy going. You got to get him going. I don't think it helped. Like the first 3 quarters, CeeDee Lamb had 12 targets. Nobody else for Dallas had more than 7. Like he was basically doubling the target share of anybody else, and it wasn't resulting in anything productive for Dallas. And they kept trying to get that going. I think they would have been better off just saying, I don't know why it's not working. It will come back. Like CD is good. Dak is good. They'll find each other again. But right now we need to focus on just picking up first downs.
But that had been their strategy this whole season, man. They had been feeding CeeDee Lamb this entire season.
I don't know that it was a strategy as much as just he's their best player. When you play the game honest and you're playing well and everything is good, most of the targets will go to CeeDee Lamb because he's the best player you have. The point being, I think when you start to focus on that as the thing, like we forget everything else, we've got to get CeeDee Lamb the ball because otherwise we don't win the game. Well, now you're force feeding him the ball in plays where you wouldn't normally force feed him the ball, and that's not helping. And now the defense can zero in on that as well. And like the first interception, right? It's like that's a ball that's forced in there, and Jair Alexander ends up making the play. Now,
That's forced to Cooks.
No, I know. That wasn't the CeeDee Lamb. But the point being, when you're forcing these plays, you're just putting a target on where you're going to go with the ball.
So the play we referenced earlier, Jordan Love to Dontavian Wicks for a 20-yard touchdown. It was 3rd and 7. And again, Love, it was all-out blitz, and he just puts it right on Wicks, 20-yard touchdown, puts Green Bay up 20-0. They missed the extra point. And then Dallas comes right back. And this is what I'm saying. Like, it was like, man, we're losing. They started pressing, whatever it was. Dak completely misreads the coverage, throws the ball right to Darnell Savage. It was like Green Bay kind of disguised coverage, but it wasn't, it was just rolling safeties. It wasn't anything that you don't see every single week in the NFL. Darnell Savage jumps the pick 6. That put Green Bay up 27-0. So those 2 touchdowns in under 2 minutes, that was essentially the dagger for the rest. I mean, that was it for the rest of the game. Dallas was already down 3 scores, but then the pick 6 was horrendous, man.
Yeah.
And that was it for the Cowboys. I don't know why they seemed so off early on, unless it really is a team that is a front runner like that. And I use the term front runner in a way that they forced a ton of turnovers on defense. And my question is, why is this on both sides of the ball? Because I've broken down the Dak Prescott grades and all that, where all of his best games are against the worst teams. But the defense does this too. Dallas's defense has been so driven by turnovers the last couple of years. Are they only good when they go up against Daniel Jones and the Giants and Sam Howell and Washington, and they have these quarterbacks that they could pressure and force fumbles, and they get all these pick 6s, and they do all this stuff against bad teams? How do you fix a team that dominates bad teams and looks completely different in big games when they have to go up against Buffalo, when they have to go up against the Niners, when they have to go up against a hot Packers team or any playoff team, basically, and they can't do it? I don't know how you fix that, right? I mean, we're going to talk team building. We're going to what is the team doing free agency? What do they do in the draft? Like, what does Dallas do from here? And one of the things we're going to keep an eye on this week, I mean, Jerry Jones was flabbergasted after the game. He's calling it one of the biggest surprises he's seen in football in the last 30 years. I mean, Mike McCarthy might be out here. A lot of people are already pointing to, he's going to call Bill Belichick. And we'll be talking about that this week. Like, will Bill Belichick go work with Jerry Jones? For him, but also with him, with Stephen Jones. Bill Belichick, is he going to get full personnel control to go to Dallas? And if you're Bill Belichick and you're looking around the league, like, where are the places I would want to go? Like, Dallas would have to be one of them, right?
Yeah.
Because of the foundation that's already, like, the personnel is great. This is what I'm saying.
In some
the
way.
personnel is really good. The personnel in Miami is really good. I don't know how you fix those situations, because on paper it's there, but there are these other intangible things, like we can't win in the playoffs, that need to get fixed in Dallas, and I don't know how you do that. I don't have great answers this morning.
No, I see that. I mean, Dallas was a 7.5-point favorite for this game. It makes sense that Jerry was flabbergasted. I mean, they were supposed to win this game handily, and instead they got wrecked.
This was their first home loss since they lost to Brady's Bucks week 1 of 2022. And look, the playoff narrative and all that stuff, it's fun. It's mostly there. But also last year in week 1 of the playoffs, or wild card round, Dak Prescott had one of his best games of all time. In the playoffs, it did happen in the playoffs, against the Bucks in Tampa Bay. Dak was immaculate, and they overcame, 5 missed extra points in that game. They basically put up almost 40 points against the Bucks if they just kicked the extra points. So it's not like every single playoff game is horrendous by Dak. It's just the last one always is.
Right.
Every time that they lose, and this was another one.
It's more, I don't even think necessarily it's one thing that keeps failing over and over again. It's more that, again, what we talked about before, they are now not just playing the Green Bay Packers or whoever they're playing in any given game. They're playing decades of history now, and they have this overwhelming weight of pressure on them in a way most teams don't. So when something goes wrong, anything, it spirals, and it spirals out of control. So in this game, it was absolutely the offense just didn't do anything, and something wasn't right, and the whole thing collapsed. And then, the defense has always been vulnerable. It was always constructed off the back of incredible pass rush, which then created incredible turnovers on the back end. But the vulnerability was always, well, if you can run the ball on them, you keep them out of those pass rush situations, and that neutralizes their biggest threat. And the Packers showed drive one, they were able to do that. They had that schematic wrinkle where we're going to show up in 12 personnel, force you to be a nickel, and you're outmanned up front. Dallas never adjusted to that. So I think from that point on, like if you knew that going into the game, I think number one, 7.5 points as the line disappears, and number two, you're like, this is a shootout game. Both sides are going to struggle to stop the opposition. There's going to be a lot of points, and it ended up, I guess, being that way if you look at the box score. But you're like, this is going to be an absolute shootout. Both offenses are going to cook. And then the difference was that was how it manifested, but the offense for Dallas was out of sync for some reason. And I don't know if that was just pressure or if something else was going on, but that side of the ball didn't fire, and now that's how you end up getting blown out.
Yeah, Joe Barry's defense was under a lot of heat. I mean, we highlighted all the quarterbacks that had career season best games against them. And
since he reached the brink where everyone's like, all right, it's time.
It's over.
I've seen enough.
Yeah.
Get him out of there right now. He's dialed up 3 games where he's absolutely murdered the opposing offense.
Yeah, and in these games, again, I know Dallas scored 32 and a lot of it's garbage time and all that stuff. If the game was closer, there's still a chance Dallas, just over time, they're a good offense going up against a defense that shouldn't be able to stop them. Like, they may have scored 32. But Green Bay's defense did their job early on, made the stops that they needed to, and, of course, the pick 6 was absolutely huge. So, all right, let's get to do you want to get to the Sunday night game?
Dak still made a couple of insane throws, by the way. Like, in the
did.
midst of all this, like, there's a throw to Jake Ferguson where he drops it into a bucket in, like, in between 3 or 4 different guys. Like, I think the discussion for him, like the 201 that we had before, is even more difficult because you can construct a pretty strong case that Dak Prescott was MVP this year, and yet in the playoffs he melted down and they lost again. And now the asking price for him is going to be even steeper than it is for Tua because A, he's already on a big contract, and B, I think he's been better over time. So Dallas is now looking at this and going like, can we pay this guy $60 million a year? And if not, what the hell is the plan?
I don't think it's exactly QB purgatory because I think Dak's in the top 8. This year he was even better. But I don't know what you do with all his best games came against bad teams. Because I think that's valuable. I say this all the time. It's valuable being good against bad teams. It's very valuable to dominate when you're supposed to. But if the goal is to win a championship and you're not going to do it against the best teams, I don't know what you do with that.
Maybe how many years has Trey Lance been learning from the bench now? Maybe he's right on the Jordan Love pathway.